And we're in. How you guys doing today? Let me run up through the chat. What's up, Trail Dust, Bloobs, Skyforge? Y'all are having a nice little conversation there. Mick Chu, good morning. Paul Orchard. And yeah, well, that was quick. All four of you. Looks like Bloobs was having some fun time swapping out fuel pumps and breaking sculptures. What's up, John Jude, Robert Whitney? Put a woot in the chat for Wootz. Hey, Dogbone. What's up, Dwayne? David McMinn. Hi. How you doing? Still learning this welding thing? Yeah, me too. I hope one day to take a class or two, to take a course in welding and get really good at it. Like really good at it. Evening, Wayne. Now, Sam Towns was supposed to, or was going to, or was we discussed possibly having him here this week. He ended up being really busy and can't be here today. And I have thrown a message out to Speargrass to try and hook him in, but words. We got J-Rod. He is listening in. He's busy right now, but he's able to listen in. He might pop in a little bit here and there. And Solbert is at work and waiting on tire changes and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So he's going to be in and out.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Glad I could drop in for a little bit. I am about 2 hours into my third consecutive shift, and with two more to go, I guess. Well, this one and then one more after that, I guess, maybe. And I'm waiting on a tire guy right now that's back there beating on that thing, and he's almost done, and I'll have to head on down the road a bit. But for now I'm here, and we'll see how tolerable the noise is once I get rolling.
Yeah. What's up, Dylan? Shane? How y'all doing? So I kind of want to take advantage of time that we have you here and just jump right into Metal of the Week. Because
let's do that. Let's knock out what we can while we can, because at best I've got 15 minutes at the least. But let's go ahead and dive right into Wootz, man.
Yeah. As usual, what we do is Solbert here, he regales us with what he's researched about it, and then we kind of discuss it, pull up other research, and kind of do our thing and let it go organically. So I say let's jump right in. Let us know the specifics you found.
All right. So of course, I mean, everybody, when you first get into blacksmithing and you hear about Wootz, because somebody says something about Damascus, and then somebody else says, "That's not Damascus, man. That's powder and welded steel. Damascus is really Wootz." Well, no, Wootz is Wootz. So there, that's just semantics. By the definition of modern terminology, in modern language, Wootz steel is a crucible steel. It was honestly what surprised me is it was prepared very similar to shear steel, which we discussed a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Basically the same darn process. The only difference that the shear steel was case hardened. It remained in a solid form while it absorbed the carbon, whereas the Wootz was heated to absorb the carbon and then further heated until it melted. And so what that melting did, and they didn't like stir it up or make it all uniform or anything like that. They melted it in the crucible and then let it harden, and then they'd heat it up and beat it into shape, And so it would be, the pattern in the Wootz would be just the way that the steel and the iron kind of mixed together. It was an ingot of steely iron with a fairly consistent carbon content of between 1 and 1.6%. And that's relatively high compared to what we're used to today. And I would, I would say it would be fairly brittle if it weren't for the fact that it's not uniform. I mean, like the steel, because it's not just steel. There's some steel, there's some iron, and so the that's what gives you the colorized waves in it, which are an interesting pattern all in itself. It's just due to the pattern in Wootz is due to heat convection while it's in its liquid state, and that's just the different alloys not mixing, but just moving past each other until they get to the crystallization point. Right. And I mean it's and so basically this stuff was originated as best guess about 500 BC. BCE, however you want to discuss, however you want to say that. And it was around down in southern India was the origin, and it was manufactured in several towns whose names I cannot pronounce. And I mean it's not even much point in trying there. I'll just butcher them anyways. And so it was available there for quite some time.
In the marketplaces and such.
Yeah, that was the marketplace for the longest time. For at the time, some of the best steel known in the world. And we're talking about the Middle Ages now. We're talking, like say the advent of shear steel, which is basically the same thing, except because shear steel is basically cut and stacked and welded, you pattern welded. That's how it gets the uniform carbon from the I can never remember that word. Case hardening. Because basically shear steel is case hardened wrought iron, and then it's folded together to get that carbon down in the middle. Well,
right.
With Wootz, the carbon is already all the way through it, and I completely forgot where I was going with that. Right. There was a point, and then I went off on I saw a squirrel. So yeah, it's. The bands and the color it's
carbon layers
of microscopic carbides and tempered martensite, pearlite matrix, and higher carbon steel.
It's what gives it its pattern.
Basically it's a just different alloys all sitting next to each other. Some of them lower carbon content than others, and that's probably why it's not as brittle as it would be if it were uniform steel of that carbon content.
Right. That's
if that were if you had a uniform 1.6, you'd be hard pressed to temper that thing down low enough where you couldn't shatter it.
Yeah, it's what gave it its the attributes that made it better than other steels of the time. Because it had all those it had the ability to have multiple attributes of the metals of the time.
Right, and it was the way it's described is in cakes of steely iron. They came to be known as Wootz. So it's it's steely iron. It's iron that's got steel in it.
Yeah, called hypereutectoid by modern metallurgists. I'm just reading something. So yeah, Insanity has joined the voice chat. How you doing?
What's up, brother?
And what's up, Carnage? What's up, Eric? Saying hi real quick to Jeff Kren. How you doing? But yeah, we're discussing Wootz for those of you just joining us, and Sully is sharing with us like kind of the metallurgical history of what Wootz is. And why it's at the time was the superior steel.
And honestly, I mean, Wootz was superior enough, and I would imagine exotic enough. It was almost exclusively used, well, at least in surviving examples today, it was almost exclusively used in and weaponry of the Middle Ages, specifically from the Middle East, in the Arabic countries and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was highly prized. They made highly prized swords out of it, daggers, knives, stuff like that. And that's mostly. There are a few like ingots of Wootz that have been recovered here or there that are degraded but still in existence. But the most well-preserved examples of that 2,500-year-old steel are in those early Arabic swords and whatnot.
Yeah. So
because I mean, those things were taken. If it was used in other stuff, that stuff wasn't very well taken care of and didn't stand the test of time. But the swords were quite prized and taken care of, and so we still have those around today.
Yeah, like
not all.
I don't. For example, maybe somebody. What was this? How many BCE? What year BCE?
500.
So that would be 2,500 years ago, roughly.
Yep.
So yeah, 2,500 years ago, it's not like they'd go, "Oh, I need to make some chain. All I have is this Wootz sitting here." No, they saved Wootz for what it would be best for, kind of like what we do.
Right. Yeah. Because they totally would have just used wrought iron for that. Because I mean, basically, they were starting with wrought iron and making Wootz.
Yeah.
Just like in the 1700s or 1400s. I'm sorry, in the 1400s, they started making shear steel out of wrought iron.
As we remember from the previous week.
1,000 years before that, or 15, I don't know. I can't do math backwards like that. Yeah, so a couple millennia before that, they were already making Wootz out of wrought iron. So.
Right. And yeah, so it's like when you say that the most surviving examples are weaponry. That makes sense too, because it was such the process to get it. It was not like these days where they go, okay, we've got this take 5160. Oh, we put 5160 in everything that uses springs, and then we just throw it away. And you can go to the junkyard now and find springs or mud flap hangers or what have you that's typically 5160, and be like, oh, it's just as a modern blacksmith artist now, you go, oh, I just got all this scrap steel. I need to make a project. I'll make a pair of tongs or make a all I've got is some 3/8 spring steel. I'll make whatever out of that. No, they saved that for what it was needed for, and the cheaper, easier, more common metals is what they would use to make their other items. Like, I don't know. Surely they didn't make bottle openers out of it.
Yeah, that's what we would do with it today. You know that?
Yeah, I absolutely. If I had a billet of Wootz, I'd be making a bottle opener out of it. Morning, Thomas.
Yo.
Dylan, who can answer the common formula for Wootz though? I'll wait. Now.
It's not really a formula. It's iron and bamboo and hey, I gotta hold on. I gotta pause here just a second.
I will say this, and I'd have to look it up to link it. But yeah, there is as Eric said.
Come on.
It has been. I think some guy. I'm looking it up. Wootz. A metallurgist blacksmith came up with. Where's it at? I'm trying to remember the name of the guy. When you go to YouTube and look up Wootz, the Wootz making of.
All right, I'm back, and I'm fixing to be rolling. So if this gets loud and obnoxious, let me know, and I'll keep them to this. But
no problem.
Actually, hold on. Let me pause 1 second. I got to climb out and climb up into my engine compartment and shut my heater off right quick. It's going to get a little bit out of hand.
Now, the reason it's contradictory and everything, Dylan, is I've watched that a couple times, and it is a 50-minute video. if I recall from the video, he actually got steel from got iron ore from that area. He did everything in his power to make it as authentic as possible, studying manuscripts and testimonies and whatnot, and it was somewhere around it was his life's project, and it was somewhere along the lines of 80 to 90% accurate, if not more, and he had figured out what he needed to do to get it even more accurate. But I believe the guy died, and Al Pendre was his name, and I believe he died before he could finish his life's work, his research, and his experiments. But it is the closest anybody has ever gotten to true Wootz steel, and it's just one of those things. There's not directly related to Wootz, but whenever ancient steels are discussed or ancient metals are discussed, this comes up. I believe it's in India. Don't quote me on that, but there's they call it an iron pillar, and it's just a rod in the center of a town, and it's thousands of years old and shows almost no corrosion, little to no corrosion, and there are elements in it that even with spectrometers and big Sully words, that they can't figure out what was used to make it, so it's how that applies to Wootz. I'll get right one sec, Sully. How that applies to Wootz and our modern view on Wootz and our modern attempts at recreating Wootz is, thousands of years ago they had techniques and stuff that either due to, man, this is too much of a pain in the butt, and we figured out a better way to do it, that just over the centuries have just been lost or passed and don't need it, so it's very difficult. You would think it'd be simple, but it's very difficult to actually pull up an exact replica of an ancient metal, because they probably used a technique that is so far pushed back out of date, and yes, yeah, everybody's going alien steel and stuff like that. You know what? I believe in aliens. It's entirely possible, but when you look in the realm of pure academia and science, people have gotten close, but it just might be that little ingredient that they haven't been able to think of to add, be it a step or process or whatever. Back to you, Sulbert.
All right. Well, so for starters, I think you give way too much credence to the mystery there. The composition of Wootz is well known and well documented. I can tell you exactly what's in it, and it's down to the hundredth of a point. The what isn't known is how it got there. Well, I mean, exactly, but how it got there is because that's what was in the iron. I mean, because they didn't have commercially pure iron. The quality of the Wootz is going to depend on the source of the iron. Much like in wrought iron production, there were areas in England that produced way better wrought iron than other places. Some of it was desirable, some of it was crap, and it all has to do with the impurities in the iron in the particular mine or area where they're producing it. And so the content of your Wootz is going to vary depending on where the iron was sourced from, because that's where everything comes from. In the making of the Wootz, that's quite simply just bamboo and steel, and you heat it until it melts. I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's basically it. That's all you're really throwing in the crucible is your iron, and they typically used bamboo for their carbon source. So that's what's in Wootz is bamboo and iron. Now, what's in the iron? Man, you could name off 40 or 50 different elements. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, some of it there's some of it has aluminum, some of it has manganese, some of it has molybdenum. I mean, it all varies depending on the source of the iron that the Wootz came from. And so therein lies the difference of like, well, nobody can recreate it. Well, no, you can't recreate it, because in order to recreate this exact Wootz that's in this blade, you have to source the wrought iron from the exact same place that iron came from in that blade.
Yes.
And that's not possible. Therefore, technically speaking, no currently surviving specimen of Wootz can be exactly recreated.
Unless
So
you use
that
that specimen as a
It's
source.
not that the formula is lost. It's that, you know, I mean, it's not the formula, I would say, but that the process is well known. It's just we don't have those materials as they were at that time, impure and, you know, full of junk.
Yeah, yeah, and
and some of that junk lended greatly to the qualities of the Wootz, and some of it did not. You know, just, you know, like silica doesn't do a whole lot for making it strong, but it does make a pretty pattern if you etch it.
right. Yeah, and if I may sidestep and say, if you're driving and making a whole bunch of noise, we can't tell. You're doing good.
Well, I'm not yet. I'm easing down the dirt road at what's that, 25 clicks.
Well, to me, it sounds like you're sitting at your desk.
Yeah, well, I'm only rolling at 1,000 RPM yet, so I'm fixing to hit the pavement. And, yeah, give me about 3 minutes. We'll see what it's like. I don't know.
Yeah, getting a lot of you know, Insanity Forge says it's just like Damascus. Real Damascus can only be achieved by using iron sand from one mine in Damascus. I believe, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Damascus was the town that most of it was traded through. Okay, the mines and such surrounding it in Syria, that was the market, the closest market. So that's where that came from. So I don't believe the mine was actually in Damascus. That was the market.
No, that was Damascus was simply the hub of trade, because it was like that was a central trading hub for the Arab state at the time.
It's like I mean, I'm not very cultured. It's like the equivalent, today's equivalent would be like, you know, wine, for example. This wine is from this region, or this, you know, and it's I'm gonna throw up some completely false examples. This wine is from the, I can't even from the blah 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 region of France, because the acidity in the soil grows the best grapes or whatever, and they make the best wine. You know, it's like, so they call all the wine from that region this type of wine. You know, no, that's backwards. Yeah, because it's purchased from that region, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking wrong on it. Global trade really throws a damper on the analogies from ancient marketplaces and trading civilizations, because back then
you are correct. It was sold in Damascus. That was the main trading hub.
Yes, yeah. And when somebody would get it, they'd be like, "Where'd you get this steel?" "Oh, I got it in Damascus," and it got branded as Damascus steel, Damascus Wootz. You know, a Damascus blade.
And that was much less. In a lot of the reading I did, there was not really a lot of mention of Damascus. I mean, other than like, yeah, somebody sold it there once.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a whole lot of other cities that were mentioned in the production of Wootz. Not much on Damascus though.
Yeah, it's.
Which
I think
I found surprising. I thought that would be a more central theme, but it was not.
Yeah.
Well, you know what Damascus stands for, right? Its true meaning, the root word of the Arabic language is watered steel. And it refers to the actual pattern of it instead of where it's from or anything like that.
Huh. Is it possible that the town was named after the type of steel that, or the type of metal that, made the town popular?
It's very possible because the root word Damas is the root word for watered in Arabic. And the Damascus blades were often described as exhibiting water patterns on their surface, and was often referred to as watered steel in multiple languages.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, it's Sorry, I'm reading the comments, so I'm like split. My attention is split between insanity, the comments, and all that fun stuff. But I mean, I don't want to get too far off topic, because Wootz steel is, number one, it's a massive topic with so many tangents. With the discussion of Wootz steel, you can go into the metallurgical discussions of the different processes to make it, how those processes have turned into, what we have today, and how those, and all that. Or you can turn to the what we've switched to, the trade town, and the etymological meanings behind words and what, all of that. It's such. Trust me, guys. We will talk Wootz, other tangents again in the future. It's one of those, like, you can go on forever.
Yeah, just for clarification, using today's modern definition, Wootz is a crucible steel. That's what we're discussing, and we're going to consider Damascus to be pattern welded steel, because that's what it is mostly today.
The modern,
the argument of Damascus is Wootz and Wootz is Damascus. That's kind of a moot point. We're specifically we're just talking about crucible steel, which was known as Wootz 2,500 years ago up till hell, it's still known as that today, but it's not exactly used anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Side note, how's the background noise?
You're fine. I as a matter of fact, I could probably turn you up a little bit. Turn it up for what?
That's amazing. The noise canceling and these things are pretty decent, I guess.
Oh yeah, no, it's at most it sounds like you're out in your yard walking. So you're totally cool. Good morning, Ben. Good morning to all those people that have popped in and I haven't said good morning to, like Uncle Bucks, how you doing? Bill Wheel, how you doing? But yeah, this is one of those tricky subjects to discuss, because there's so much, as I was saying, there's so much information, some of it good, some of it bad, some of it I heard this from somebody, so this is what I take as rote knowledge. Some of it, I read this from somewhere, so I took it as rote knowledge. And as we said earlier, it's an ancient steel, an ancient process. And Al, let me pull up his name again, Al Pendre, modern, metallurgically speaking, is the closest that we've gotten for ancient Wootz steel. Is it 100% accurate? No. Is it as close as somebody has gotten in a modern world? Yeah. So, but the thing about it is it's like, it's one of those that has a whole bunch of, well, actually, statements about it. And bottom line, if you look at the science, like what Sully is doing in researching the metallurgical aspects of it and the steel compositions of it and whatnot, that's looking at the science of it. All other discussions on it are really kind of like past and second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand, fifth-hand information that may have roots in truth, may have roots in legend, or legend being in I heard this, so this rings true, so I'll start talking about this, and
right. I mean, any other than the science, it's all subjective.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. It's subjective and worth discussing. That's why it makes such an awesome topic. Is the hey, what have you heard about it? That's pretty interesting.
Right. And you can't really be wrong, because at the end of the day, it's all of it. It's all just a best guess. There's very very little original writing about it, other than talking about how good it is.
Yeah.
Not a lot of this is exactly how we did this time. So I mean, as far as the process goes and all of that, I mean, yeah, man, it's we could get pretty darn close by doing what we were pretty sure they did, but that's about it.
Yeah, and I keep referencing Alpendre.
I've drank a lot of beer since they were making Wootz. So
at the end of the video, I don't want you guys to click on it now, so I'm not sharing it now. But at the end of the video, or at the end of the show, I'll link the video that I've seen on it about Alpendre. And if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you check it out.
I would like to apologize beforehand, because I have never watched a single video or anything about Wootz. Ever.
So
all I've ever done is discussed it amongst friends and read about it in written form. That's all.
It's an interesting video. It's the one that I keep referencing where they recreate or attempt to recreate Wootz. Hey Sam, he did pop in.
Hello. Yeah, I ended up the thing I was tied up with earlier ended earlier than expected.
Okay.
Right on.
Are you winning, son?
Yeah, no, it's all good.
All right.
How are we all this evening?
We're fantastic. We're talking Wootz today, and brief recap. Sully ran through the metallurgical properties of the ancient artifacts of Wootz, and the Sully, got a recap for us? Your science. So, I'm good with. I can hear it and understand it, but I can't.
I went over the approximate time frame of its production, where it was produced, the consistent, or basically how it was done, and we just a little bit of supposing that about the Wootz back in the day, and this is what we know of it due to surviving examples that are still in existence, and that's about where we're at, and also making the distinction that we're talking specifically about Wootz crucible steel, not Wootz Damascus, which I'm using Damascus as a reference in modern terminology to pattern welded steel, and crucible steel as Wootz. Making a differentiation by modern definition there. One is one is the other. We're talking about crucible steel.
Yeah, no. Fair
Go.
Uncle Butts, I stopped the Forgecast to come here for a bit.
How dare you, Steve? How dare you? No, that's perfectly understandable. Yeah, Wootz is an incredibly interesting, kind of section of metallurgy.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the great pleasure of discussing at length with Peter Burt, who is one of the foremost experts on Wootz these days, who also has a YouTube channel dedicated to Wootz and the making and forging thereof. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I highly suggest going and checking out Peter Burt's channel.
Did he take over Alpendre's journey?
So Al was like one of several guys working on it at the same time. Between he himself, Alpendre, Peter Burt and Richard Ferrer, who did the Secrets of the Viking Sword, as I saw mentioned in the chat earlier.
Yeah.
They all three of them have kind of done a lot of research, and it's shared between the community.
Yeah.
There. Al was kind of like the front runner in trying to recreate historical Wootz. So, recreating Wootz as close to metallurgically similar to the materials that we've found in existing pieces. Peter and Richard are more dedicated towards creating modern Wootz and understanding the metallurgy behind dendritic patterns and all that kind of stuff, and playing with alloys that way. So, yeah, it all depends. But Wootz varies so wildly in its content. It's very easy to play with the alloy content and stuff like that. Like Peter recently, I say recently, it was last year, but he made a bunch of stainless Wootz, which was dendritic stainless high carbon steel. So it was a Wootz, but it was also incredibly high in chromium.
Yeah.
So like it's an incredibly ubiquitous steel when it comes to like, there is no such thing as true Wootz, because even Wootz made in period, if we're talking about watered steel, as it was referred to in most, like Persian texts, most of the references are to various alloys, like the ones that we have in existing blades and stuff like that, the stuff that we've actually metallurgically tested, mass spectrometered and all that kind of stuff. The alloy content varies so wildly as to not be able to be named specifically what is Wootz.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's like, people go, oh, Wootz is a, is lost to time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yes and no. I mean...
Well, yeah, realistically...
I brought up earlier, before you got in here, Sam, that really each batch of Wootz depended on the impurities that were in the iron that they started with, so...
Correct.
And you can't hardly even reproduce that twice. So every batch of Wootz is going to be different, to a varying degree.
Exactly. One of the things that's commonly misunderstood about Wootz is that not all Wootz carries a pattern. I think when I was reading some research that Richard Ferrer was doing, out of 150 blades tested, only 10 of them had a well-defined dendritic pattern.
Yeah.
And all of the others had such a fine pattern as to not be visible to the human eye. They would just turn grey. Because they are a crucible steel, first and foremost. They are a homogeneous material. Yeah. Yeah, which and the
dendrites
are formed. The dendrites are formed through alloying content. As Sully was saying, it's about the impurities. Not necessarily impurities. A lot of the time, it's more the alloying content. So we're talking chromium or vanadium, and specifically in a lot of the ones found in and around Damascus were titanium and tungsten.
Right.
So
and basically,
specifically, I meant impurities as in everything that's not just iron. So that was referring to
not just iron or carbon.
Not just the dirt. I mean, I was always stuff. Just that's everything that's not iron is what I meant. So.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Like I got what you meant, but like in common colloquialism, normally when we talk about impurities, we're talking about things like sulfur and phosphorus, stuff that we don't want.
Yeah.
But basically, Wootz is just so stupidly high in carbon that it segregates carbides. Now, carbide segregation is something quite common in stuff like 52100 and modern high carbon steels, even like CPM 3V, like the crucible particle material steels. But the thing about Wootz is that it's up around 1.2 to 1.6% carbon. It's stupidly high, and so those carbon that carbon has to migrate out of the material in a way that causes that crystalline lattice, and that's the dendritic pattern that we see in quote unquote true Wootz.
Now, if I may, Bill Wheel just wrote something up that I believe is one of those. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe is one of those common arguments that you see about Wootz. Wootz is the original Damascus steel and doesn't decay. Specific raw material, specific way to make it with a specific grain structure. From what I'm understanding that you two are enlightening me with, is that is partially true. There are so many variations and so many variables that go into ancient Wootz steel, or that went into ancient Wootz steel, that essentially each batch of Wootz steel is different.
Yes.
So there is no, like, if you hold two blades from two different blacksmiths from that time, and they're both considered Wootz, but both of them at a molecular and at an elemental level are different, but they're still both Damascus Wootz.
Unless they were formed from the same crucible, they're going to be different.
Yes, unless they were formed in the same batch.
On that note, like most Wootz crucibles were actually quite small, and so most Wootz blades that we have in existence these days are actually multiple crucibles that have been forge welded together, multiple pucks. And so for that reason, a lot of the swords aren't even chemically consistent inside the blade itself.
Right.
Because they've had to make multiple batches of Wootz in order to make a sword.
To make enough steel, yeah.
Yeah, so to make enough steel for a sword, they needed that many.
Some of the swords back then were big.
I mean, if we're talking like original Damascus period, then we're talking shamshir and scimitar and stuff like that. So we're talking single-handed swords, tulwar, pulwar, that kind of thing around India and Sri Lanka.
A scimitar, isn't that one that is about well, you guys can't see me because of my camera angle and everything. You know, about 30 to 30 inches long, roughly, and it widens at the end with a bit of a curve.
Yeah, they don't tend to widen at the end. That's more of a cartoon thing. Okay. But yeah, most of them are don't have a lot of profile taper. They do have a bit of distal taper, and yeah, they're about 30 inches long, between 26 and 35 inches long on average, and broadly curved. But like in terms of like size of blade, that's a relatively medium-sized blade when you compare it to stuff like the longsword and stuff like that in later European blades. One of the things that I would like to say about Wootz being the quote original Damascus steel is that has been argued by people in various forms of historicity and all that kind of stuff. But as far as I've found in my research, the first reference to Damascus steel, specifically as Damascus steel, was made in an 1830s gunsmithing book, in talking about pattern welded barrels. So,
right.
The first it was, and it wasn't even referred to as Damascus steel. It was referred to as Damascene in pattern. And so, like, the idea that Wootz is the original Damascus steel is kind of it's true, but it's not.
It's a misnomer.
Yeah, the reason that they called it Damascene in pattern is because Wootz was, patterned. It had a visible pattern, and so did pattern welding. So basically, they just said, well, both of these things have patterns, so therefore they're Damascene. They are they're of Damascus, and so that's where it all really came from.
So, and that's one thing I said actually just before you popped in was this is one of those subjects that it's been around and been discussed for so long through so many different mediums and so many different professions relating around metallurgy that there is a lot of actualities and a lot of retelling of this is what I've heard, this is what I've read, this is what I've understood, this is what I've been explained, this is and all the different sources. But if you think about it, I think somebody in the chat mentioned earlier this morning was that paper was expensive back then. They couldn't jot down, detailed accounts and detailed explanations and detailed this and that. It's so it's a lot of
less
mishmash.
less of the expense of the paper and more about the literacy of the people that were involved. Most blacksmiths of the period weren't able to read or write, so I mean, they weren't going to record anything.
I mean,
Simply blacksmiths were just a bunch of dumb brutes that beat metal all day.
I mean, they were as intelligent as they come. But the thing is that there is a significant difference between intelligence and literacy.
Yeah,
you can be an incredibly smart person who doesn't know how to read or write Arabic. But yeah, I mean, like the thing is that like we don't have a lot of recorded material from early Persian sources, or early Sri Lankan sources, which we know Sri Lanka and India was the place where Wootz originated. But the big thing with Wootz is that there's a lot of mythology surrounding it, much like the katana and stuff like that, and since its reintroduction into popular society, it's become this kind of super steel. People keep referring to it as a super steel, and realistically, it isn't a super steel.
That's
it. It was a super steel of the time, right?
Yes.
Don't get me wrong. Compared to the non-homogeneous bloomery steels that we would be talking with earlier, the monomolecular crucible steel was always going to be significantly better, but as we have found in many of the historical pieces that have actually been tested, a lot of them weren't even hardened, because the act of hardening it would potentially make it more brittle than was possible, right? Than was possible to use as a sword. Because one thing you have to understand about Wootz is that it's all about carbide segregation. The reason that it works is because it segregates the carbides into solid carbon crystals, like diamond. Right. And that means that it gets a really toothy edge that holds forever because it's, solid carbon. But also, it's a solid carbon matrix held up by soft iron. And if you don't have that soft iron supporting that really, really rigid carbon crystal, it'll just shatter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was thinking, mentioning earlier, is it was a way that combined, an ancient way to combine attributes of different materials at the time. So that you could have that brittle, but hard but not brittle, without having to go through the modern tempering processes.
Yeah, and if
I just kind of suppose that off the top of my head. I'm kind of flattered that I got that part right.
Right.
If you look at a lot of traditional, if you look at a lot of original Wootz blades, especially like the Indian tulwar and stuff like that, a lot of them are really over sharpened, right? Like they are significantly thinned in cross section, because one of the things about Wootz and one of the things about carbide segregation is that the larger the carbide crystals, the more likely they are to fall out of the matrix. So if you think about them as grains of sand in like a putty, if they're on the edge of something, they're just going to pop out. And as they pop out, the blade is going to get ragged and dull. And so therefore they required more and more sharpening. So having a heavily patterned Wootz sword wasn't necessarily a good thing, because that meant that the carbides were quite large, which meant that they would fall out of solution quite easily.
Kind of like refined wrought versus cheap wrought, or
yeah, particularly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Whereas an artist or somebody who likes the visual aspect of it would go for something a little less refined for the grain, and whereas somebody who needs that molecular strength would go for something, I don't care what it looks like as long as it's strong, as long as it does the
exactly.
job. So good.
And that's why a lot of the preserved Wootz swords that we have, like the really well-preserved ones, are the really highly patterned ones, because they weren't real fighting weapons. They were handed to kings and,
for the
high-ranking rich people. Yeah, exactly.
Pieces.
Morning, John.
Yeah, it's like the Victorian era swords that were all blue and gilt. That they were covered in gilding and engraving and all this kind of stuff. they were made so that they could have been swung at someone, but they were never intended to be.
Sure. like most of my stuff, it's made, intended to be without intended to be used, just to sit on my shelves.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. If you buy a Yama's hammer, it's intended to hang on the shelf and be looked at. He doesn't expect you to actually hit steel with it.
You did what?
You're not supposed to use that hammer.
And
Exactly.
also sidestep and welcome Speargrass. He's been
Hey, Adam.
Maintaining the chat.
There was an earlier question from Dylan Corwin that I didn't get to.
Scrolling. Dylan Corwin. Anyone in here
asking-
have experience with making and/or working Wootz? My question to that would be: forge it straight or fold it a few times to maximize fluidity of the steel.
So fluidity of the steel is not a thing. When it comes to Wootz, because it's a crucible, because it's completely liquid at one point, it is as homogeneous as it's going to get.
There's no point in
there is
folding
going to be, there is going to be no differentiation in the layers or anything like that. So basically, these days we have furnaces and crucibles large enough to make big pucks of Wootz. So you just make a puck the size you need and forge that thing out to be as the size that you want. In historical examples, they would sometimes have to stack several pucks together, as I said earlier, in order to get enough material. It wasn't so much about creating a stronger blade or anything like that, folding it. It was purely just to increase the amount of material they had to make a blade.
To make a
But
big
yeah,
wide-faced scimitar.
Exactly. As far as using Wootz goes, you just literally just forge the puck out into the blade, much like you would forge out a modern steel.
Yes.
And yeah, as far as making Wootz, as I said, Peter Burt has a channel running, talking about making it, all of the different things that he goes through, forging it. And a friend of mine, Aaron Finn, who's a really good mate of mine over in the Eastern States, he makes Wootz quite regularly. And he does a lot of Instagram stuff, talking about his journey, which is quite interesting as well.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to mention is that there has been a popularization of Wootz on a number of channels on YouTube, like FZ Making Knives, which isn't actually Wootz. He calls it Wootz, but it's actually Bulat. And interestingly, Bulat is another form of crucible steel, mostly common in Eurasia and Russia and Ukraine and all that kind of stuff, which is very similar in creation, but actually uses alloy banding rather than carbide segregation to create the pattern.
Okay.
So,
Wootz is kind of modern, in the modern sense, becoming more of that buzzword to hit your algorithms.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's like using the word Damascus in literally anything.
Yeah, it's that buzzword for marketing.
Yeah, precisely.
And that goes... And this is a subject in and of itself, but that goes to the argument, when somebody posts a video or makes a comment on a weapon or a blade and or advertises it as Damascus and says, oh, making Damascus, check out this Damascus knife, and without a doubt you will see 1,000 argumentative comments. Well, it's not actually Damascus, blah 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 blah, and all of that. I hear you giggle. I like that sound. And I think Sully actually told me that, no, we're not going into that today. But to briefly touch on it, that's the thing. In modern vernacular, accuracy comes second to marketing. If the buzzword is Damascus or the buzzword is Wootz, that's what you're going to advertise it as. That's what you're going to call it. Like at the beginning, during the pre-show, and for those of you who don't know, the pre-show is where me and Sully and whoever the heck wants to join in is in the chat for the half hour before the show. I had entertained the idea of making the title of the video Damascus-Wootz. And so he's like, no, we're not starting that argument.
It's unavoidable, though. When you start talking about Wootz, it's unavoidable.
Yeah, but, you know, that's why we're not really going into that much in this, because it's like, that's a show topic of its own, you know.
Yeah, the one thing I find quite commonly I come across in Wootz is that it's always, we've lost that technology. We've lost the ability to make Wootz. We can't make Wootz anymore. And as Sully and I have covered now, that's complete bullshit.
Yeah, you absolutely... Hot mic!
Yeah,
no,
I mean, like...
It is, because it's... And as Bill Wheel said, what is considered by the actually people... True Wootz is back in the day was the like Wootz, or iron ore from that region, from that specific mine, done made in that specific area, and it's like, yeah, kinda, but I mean the Wootz is the Wootz as Sully and Sam have explained it. Wootz is the name of the steel or name of the material achieved by using this process. So you can actually have true Wootz made in Nevada today, if you so chosen.
Yeah. As far as I view it, Wootz is more of a process than an actual product.
Yes, but the way I would view it is it's a product achieved by a specific process.
Yeah.
It's basically like calling pig iron.
Yeah.
It's made from a very specific process using certain materials.
Yeah, precisely. And the thing is, like, the idea that we've lost true Wootz would discredit the fact that we've literally metallurgically tested and spectroscopied originals, and we have the down to, like, 0.00001% alloy content of those blades.
Yeah.
And so if we so wish, we can literally throw all of those things into a completely carbon neutral crucible and recreate that alloy within, ridiculously finite amounts of a percent. So we can recreate that stuff in an instant, but we don't, because it's pointless. Like, Wootz, as I said, is not a super steel. It's actually less effective than modern steels. Much like, pattern welded steel or shear steel, as we discussed in a previous church. Right. It's just not as good as modern steel.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, like, and that's why buzzwords and like using stuff like that as a marketing term really kind of, it works for marketing, but it's detrimental to the history and the sciences of it. Because it's
absolutely.
They in modern marketing they say Wootz or Damascus is superior to modern, it's the most superior material and blah 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 blah, and everybody goes, oh, I've got to have this, I've got to have that. It's like, yeah, but the marketing is just trying to get you to buy, click, read, whatever, like it's just trying to get you to attend a specific product, whereas that's it. Like, it's the whole mythology surrounding Damascus, where people go like, it's been folded 1,000 times and therefore carries the energy of your ancestors and all this kind of crap. Yeah, I mean, and something like that, because it's like, I have heard of like, say, katanas. You were talking katanas that are typically folded to make the katana blade, where they'll like fold in or use the casing, and they'll use like their ancestors' bone dust or whatever, or this or that or something, and it's like, and it infuses with the power of the ancestors. It's like, not to detract from somebody's beliefs in that, scientifically, bone dust is carbon.
Yeah, exactly right.
So it's
it's technically it's calcium carbide.
Yeah, well,
Thank you,
it's
thank you, Professor. Yes, you are absolutely correct. Calcium carbide.
It's way more calcium than it is carbon.
Yeah.
Yes.
But back then.
But we are
It's a step on the
carbon-based
journey,
life
like a
forms.
Wootz is a step on the journey, like Model T was a step on the journey into the supercars that we have today. It's not better; it's just a step in the process.
Now.
Yeah, precisely.
Sure.
Like.
And as Beale Wheel says, it is an original version of clickbait.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. You know, clickbait's been around a lot longer than you think.
It's just they weren't clicking back then.
No, they were clicking.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's why I wish I had taken some marketing classes, because I absolutely adore marketing, because it's lying with style. It's bending the truth with style.
I absolutely abhor marketing, which is why I'm a terrible businessman. Specifically for that reason, I just can't. I can't justify lying with style.
Yeah, it's like I did acting.
Best efforts.
The best. I did acting, so it's like I got that. I can bend the truth a little bit if I need to.
Yeah.
You know, bend the truth to sugar it up for the masses. Don't like doing that. I do honor truth over anything, but sometimes to get people to listen, you gotta be like, explosive reaction. And here's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, but yeah, it's complete squirrel. But not really, because as we've talked about it, it's like marketing over the eons, essentially over the centuries, it has really brought us to why this becomes a truly interesting discussion. It's a cigarette, Bill. You won't believe what happens next at 3 a.m. For some reason, 3 a.m. is an algorithmic buzzword right now. Like, if you put 3 a.m. in your video title, you will get views, because I don't know what. Anyway, but
it's the 3 a.m. challenge thing.
Yeah, it's back then, it's like they marketed it as what it was for the time, a super steel, and that marketing was so strong that it carried on, and then as we found relics, we're like, wow, this is technology that they had back then. And I heard an actually there, so Sam. So
no, I just found it really funny that so Wootz, the Wootz process, as far as we can tell, was developed in Sri Lanka around about like 900 AD, maybe a little earlier, 800, 700 AD, like really early. Yeah. When most of Europe was still basically stumbling on steel rather than making it.
Yeah.
And obviously by 1066 and by like the 11th century, we were starting to see the Crusades, we were starting to see migration into Persia and all that kind of stuff, and they were coming into contact with these blades all the time. They were coming into contact with this kind of stuff. Obviously, the Scandinavians had come across it. The French had come across it because the Ulfberts obviously existed in small number, but again. But the thing is that it never took on in Europe, right? Like, it never caught on to make crucible steel in Europe, all the way through to the 19th century with the advent of the cementation process and blister steel. Crucible steel was never popular in European blades. And originally it was purely race and faith-based.
Right.
Right? It was purely a matter of, we don't want to use what those dirty Saracens are using.
See,
like, European steel is far superior purely because we have the right of God on our side.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a different time, and it's like, And you're absolutely right about that. Like, why would I use a heathen technique when, you know, we've got the European superiority, you know? And it's like, and that you see that throughout history, you know, like, it's that pride of mine is better than yours. And why, you know, and it's like, I had somewhere. I had somewhere to go with that. But I got distracted by the squirrel in my head, saying, yeah, but, you know, did you know that ancient, you know, swords from the Middle Ages weren't actually razor sharp because they were more used as a, you know, blunt instrument than they were as an actual sharp, you know, like. What?
Well, that's a myth.
Yeah, that's back of my brain talking. I know that's not true. It's just back of my brain. No, you know, it's like.
Yeah, no, but yeah, no, I just found it funny that like throughout history, the Europeans would fetishize Wootz and Damascus steels or Damascene steels, and they would talk about them at length, but they never adopted the process of making them. Like they never tried to start producing Wootz in any kind of on any kind of scale, which I found really interesting. From the perspective of someone who's, you know, very interested in metallurgical history and interested in metallurgy as a science, Wootz, you know, in comparison, because it is homogeneous, is superior to most of the steels of that period. But they refused to believe that because purely they were, you know, basically so racist that they couldn't believe that savages could come up with something so much more superior to what they were making.
Right.
And I just find that hubris to be very entertaining.
It is. It's an interesting when you go into any singular aspect. In this case, you know, metallurgically specific for, you know, different regions and different reasons why this took off there, this didn't take off there, this style of weapon, you know, exploded in this region, but was never used in this region, was, you know, like, when you talk about that specific subject, you know, it's, and as you said, you hit the nail on the head, it's that racism of sorts, you know, of that time where, you know, oh, they're heathens, they don't even use a straight sword, you know, or you know, like, you know, what, a curved blade, that's blasphemous, you know, like, it's like, it's that pride of the time, you know, that egotistical pride of the time that really held a lot of it back, you know, and it's like, sure, you can go into the what ifs and what ifs and why nots of history and be like, well, what if the Europeans were to widely accept this style of material? Where would we be? You know, and it's like,
oh yeah, that's a fun thought experiment.
Oh, I love thought experiments.
I will say that, like, from a practical aspect, going back to actual Wootz and talking about working it, one of the big problems with Wootz is because it is dendritic and because it is stupidly high carbon, it needs to be worked in a very specific way. Like, it can't just be worked like any other steel. You don't just heat it and beat it. Once you have formed the puck, once you have formed the ingot from the crucible, it needs to be baked. And it needs to be baked for a number of hours at a fairly high temperature. I believe when I was talking to Aaron last time, he bakes his pucks at about 1100 degrees Celsius, which is, you know, like the temperature at which copper melts, for about 2 to 3 hours.
Wow.
Before he even starts moving it.
Wow.
And then when moving it, you have to move it incredibly slowly. You can't just whack the crap out of it or it will crumble.
Because you're basically dealing with the not welding. You know, you're trying to keep it together as the
Think of the dendrites as being like,
you kind of have to massage it.
Yeah, it's like interlinking like a zipper, you know. You're trying to pull those zips apart softly, because if you pull them apart quickly, you just rip the whole thing apart.
Yeah.
You have to slowly massage those dendrites apart so that they start moving. And most of the time, in when working Wootz, you're working it at a relatively low temperature. You're working it at, you know, anywhere between 800 and 1100 degrees Celsius. So you're talking about critical temperature, 1550, and like 2000, I think, Fahrenheit, somewhere around there. I'm not sure of what 1100 is, but
not quite
the
welding
forging
temperature.
Yeah, the forging temperature for Wootz is actually incredibly narrow, and because it's so high in carbon, it's incredibly hard on the hammer. So it takes a lot of effort to make even a small blade out of Wootz. It also takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and it can potentially all go wrong really quickly.
Yeah, I got it.
There's a perfect example of that with when Man-at-Arms tried to make an Ulfbert, and the first Wootz puck they made, they tried to drift they punched a hole through the middle of their puck, cut a slit in it, and tried to push it open so that they would make everything faster.
Wow! Instead of
instead of forging it out in a bar. And when they did that, they drifted it too fast and too hot, and it just cracked into like 3 pieces. So yeah, Wootz is a massive pain to work.
Yeah. Now, I gotta say, before I get to Dylan's question here, I gotta say, Dylan, you are rocking it with questions today. You know, so, you know, big kudos to you. He goes, so would y'all say canister steel to be the best of both worlds? Question mark. Like a Canister Damascus kind of thing, you know, where you put like powdered steel into a canister and forge it out.
I think he meant crucible, but I could be wrong. I mean,
much like squishing Play-Doh or a beef ball, it'll form cracks.
Yeah, pretty much. So when you say canister steel, are we talking, like, as Yamez insinuated, are we more talking Canister Damascus, or are we talking crucible particle material steels?
Hey, Rory. Yeah, it is a fun topic. I truly think that he's talking about actual canister steel, as opposed to crucible steel, where you're taking, you know, powdered steel and heating it to the point where you forge it to be homogeneous. You know, and by best of both worlds, I'm thinking he is talking about consolidating a raw powdered material.
Okay, that makes sense.
Into a homogeneous, as opposed to going to a puck, going to a bar straight off. You know.
Yeah. Okay. The problem with Canister Damascus is the same as any forge welded steel. You've just got more surface area in a canister weld, because you've got millions of tiny little grains that are all forge welding to each other.
I'd say billions, but
there is
semantics.
Yeah, thousands, millions, you know, a very large amount. And in that case, each one of those little grains has the potential to fail a forge weld at the border. And quite commonly in Canister Damascus, I see a lot of failure to forge weld around the large pieces in a canister. You know, like, because there's lots of surface area, and it only takes the tiniest bit of impurity in the material to completely inhibit the weld.
Right.
So I wouldn't say that canister steel is even better than standard laminate Damascus, purely because it just involves that little bit extra potential for failure.
Yeah, it's one of those where if you can pull off a good billet of Canister Damascus, it's basically saying, I did everything right. I removed, you know, I added so many unnecessary variables or, you know, points of possible failure and achieved a goal. Yeah. You know.
Exactly, and I mean, canister is mostly used to create a pattern that you wouldn't be able to otherwise create.
True.
like making a Stegosaurus in steel, as I've seen Steve Schwartzer do. There's various things you can do in canister that you can't do with straight layer laminates, but it's not necessarily a better steel. Eric asks, what's the difference between a canister and a crucible in this conversation? So, in terms of talking between canisters and crucibles, yes, they are both sealed technically, but canisters are never brought to liquefying temperatures. Canisters are simply a shield to prevent, oxidization from happening inside the material, and so it allows forge welding of materials without the use of flux. Whereas crucibles are used to house a material that is then liquefied, and that's why you create homogeneous material from a crucible, is because it completely melts all of the material inside. Dylan added to his question by saying, because of layering of different non-homogeneous materials. The fact that you have non-homogeneous materials in your piece means that it is always going to be inferior to something that is homogeneous. A homogeneous material is always going to be stronger than a non-homogeneous one. The only time where that isn't true is in terms of laminates, like plywood, where you have different orientations of grain, that kind of thing. And Bill Wheel asks, Steve is the one that Will Stelter learned from on YouTube? Yes. Steve Schwartzer is the man who really invented Canister Damascus as we understand it these days. And Steve Schwartzer is just a legend in the knife-making community. He's one of the original people to start the American Blacksmiths Society. He's a font of knowledge and a really nice guy, and we're hoping to get him on the Forgecast at some point. We're waiting to hear back from him at the moment. He's a very busy man. But the things that guy does with Damascus is just insane.
I'm trying to find your coffee page, Sam, because dang it, I'm buying you a coffee. Because you are working overtime today.
Appreciate it.
I'm trying to find it.
But yeah, so and that's why when we discuss Wootz, normally it comes up as being a quote unquote superior Damascus, is purely because in period, at the time, so we're talking 700, 800 AD, we're talking the time at which steel was an unintended consequence of bloomery smelting. In Europe, you had people making completely homogeneous materials. So you're making a completely homogeneous steel, which yes is dendritic and yes very difficult to forge and all this kind of stuff, but it is homogeneous, so therefore it will bend rather than break. It will have a uniform structure to it, and so will therefore be stronger in all ways. So in period, it was an incredibly powerful steel. It was an incredibly super quote-unquote steel. But, and of course, these days, with modern industry furnaces and vacuum furnaces, especially these days, and crucible particle material furnaces, we have stuff that can create super homogeneous materials that are also specifically alloyed to micro percentages of alloy to create specific steels for a specific purpose. And that's why we get stuff like CPM 3V and CPM MagnaCut, CPM 154, and all of those really, really high cost, really, really high quality steels. Right. And that's why CPM steels are so expensive, is because they are the crucible particle materials is actually going back to making crucible steel, which is why crucible is part of the name. But it's utilizing powdered steel, so they use particled steel to homogenize the mixture before they melt it, rather than melting random blocks of material, which could lead to some inefficiencies in the overall distribution of alloy. They guarantee full distribution of alloy in their materials.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, somebody mentioned tea and I got thirsty.
blame John Cat.
Yeah.
But yeah, vacuum furnaces for heat treating metal is quite common, especially for steels that require a long soak time, or very large materials that require a long soak time to get the full depth of heat. You need a vacuum, or you need some form of deoxygenating power. So a lot of guys these days in the ABS are now moving to argon flushed kilns. So if you watch Caleb Straub, who does series on his YouTube channel, he's got an even heat kiln, which he's also linked up with an argon bottle, and he flushes all of the material out to flushes all the oxygen out with argon to create a oxygen-free environment.
Right.
So Dylan follows up, I didn't necessarily mean making a superior steel, but combining materials in an oxygen-free environment. So it's when referring to canister materials. I mean, yes.
I think a simple way to round that out would be the process of making Wootz and or any crucible steel, and the process of making Canister Damascus share similar processes, but it's a completely different thing. You know, like we said, you know, with making a crucible steel, you know, you what is it? You put the. I know that the thing that I saw with Al Pendre, he puts the glass on top of the, you know, adds glass to it so it floats to the top and kind of seals, you know, the crucible from oxygen. So in that aspect, yeah, canister. But as Sam said, with crucible steel, you are bringing it to a melted puddle.
Yeah.
And with canister, you're just bringing it to a forge welding temperature and smushing it, bringing it back to a forge welding temperature, smushing it again, and basically forcing it through heat to be homogeneous. You know, if you were to take a prepped billet of Canister Damascus, you know, like boom, you've drilled your vent hole and you have it on a stick and all that stuff, and put it in a fire and try to melt the inside, you would melt the whole thing. You know, so they're worked differently. They have different processes, but one or two kind of, yeah, you know, and that's more of a testament to how steel reacts to fire and to oxygen in the different processes. It's not that they share the processes because, you know, they're similar, if that makes any sense. You know, they share about as much process as forging different steels. Yeah, you heat it and you beat it, but different temperatures for different steels. You know, for different reasons.
Absolutely. As far as like a process to use for like making Damascus, like for making pattern welded steels, is it better to use a canister than it is to use just borax or other kinds of flux? Yes and no. It depends on your prep. If you're using no real prep, if you're not flattening your billets, if you're not cleaning everything really well and linking it all up before you put it in the canister, it's not going to weld. If you want to do dirty welds, you're better off using flux, borax, and stuff like that.
Yep.
And if you're not entirely certain of your prep, then you're going to want to use a flux.
Now,
if you can flatten everything,
for the record,
do it in the canister.
Sorry, if I can. For the record, I tried several times. I've done several. I'm not even going to call them attempts because they worked, just with varying degrees. The rusty, dirty welds that Tim is known for, and that Joey is known for. I've taken Vandersteeg. Yes, I've taken pieces of rusty metal, held them together in tongs, put them in the fire, pulled them out, tapped them, and they welded together. You know, is it the best weld? Not necessarily. Probably not. I don't have a spectrometer to go, yep, the steels are blah, 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 but they didn't break immediately. You know, I don't have a stress tester to be like, how much force to break these apart? None of that. But can it be done? Yes. Does it make it ideal? No. So I don't know if that was what you were going on to or not. I saw somebody mention it, mention rusty welds when you were talking dirty welds. Yeah, making any sort of Canister Damascus, Wootz, any process of combining source materials into a homogeneous piece, if you're about production rather than the process, or if you're about production, the idea is to remove all possible points of failure. Clean steels, well cleaned, use flux if need be, you know. So yeah, you know, if you're forced to forge, like Sam said, rusty materials, your best bet is to use flux because it removes that variable, you know.
I will clarify what Bill Wheel just said. Rust is not scale, that's why a dirty weld's possible. That's not entirely true. So when rust is heated, especially in any kind of oxygenating atmosphere, it immediately turns to scale. So the only difference between red rust and scale is one iron atom and one oxygen atom. So red rust is Fe3O4. Fe2O3, and scale, black mill scale or black fire scale is Fe3O4. So basically all that happens is you heat red rust, it just turns into scale. You can actually watch that happen if you take a red rusty thing and stick it in boiling water for about 5 minutes. You can actually watch it pick up an extra oxygen atom and transfer over one of their iron atoms. So the moment you threw it in the forge, a rusty piece of metal is going to be scaly because that rust is immediately going to convert to Fe3O4,
which you can then knock off.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the thing is, when you're talking about forge welding rusty materials that are mild steel and stuff like that, you get them hot enough, you basically just liquefy the surface material, and you can bust through the scale. Basically.
Yeah, that's kind of that's the cincher for dirty welds, is you get it hot enough to where none of that stuff matters. It goes together because, damn it, it's hot enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, with carbon steels, it's not quite that easy because carbon steel oxides are not as easy to get rid of. And that's why fluxes are necessary in most of those cases. And that's true even in like historical cases when they were forge welding high carbon steels to wrought iron or low carbon steels. They would normally use a flux. They would only do fluxless welds when not using a high carbon steel.
Now, I know we're going a little long, but dang it, we're just having so much fun. And we do have a lot of people in the chat that anybody could pop in.
It's your fault for getting me to come here.
Right? I love you, Sam.
Every time.
I love you, Sam. It's cold out. I don't want to go outside, so I'm hanging with you guys. I would like to touch on something that's not really on the topic of Damascus, or Wootz, but it is prevalent in any community, and very prevalent in certain blacksmithing communities. And firstly, Bill, I don't know if you were being half sarcastic when you said it, but this isn't about you. This is about just in general. I'm a total rookie. I'm just guessing. If you're absolutely right about that, like if you're honest about that, you say, yeah, I'm a rookie. I'm just kind of sharing what I've heard, and guessing it. Like extrapolating information. Thank you for pointing out that you're a rookie and you're guessing and admitting that. So many people, and this heralds back to the whole start of the conversation about Wootz, of the misconceptions and misnomers about Wootz, Damascus, this, that, and everything else, is I don't want to call it a downside, because with the same tool we have the ability to correct and discuss, but one of the downsides to the internet and social media and such. Hi, John, or hi, Curtis. Is I heard this from somebody, and they said it with such confidence that, this has got to be true. How could this be wrong?
Yeah.
Or I've gathered this information and extrapolated this semi-educated guesstimation of what this is, and then with that confidence, they go and they tell it to other people, and such. And those newbies or rookies or people looking for information hear it from what seems to them to be a educated, reliable source, and then that gets passed on, and so on and so forth, and it spreads like, and that's why the science of something that can be proven at a molecular level as to what's going on and what's happening and why it can be this and why this misnomer is a misnomer. It's interesting as heck to see. And
yeah.
I've known several you got the armchair quarterbacks that sit there and watch the game and you're doing it wrong, I've known several armchair metallurgists, armchair blacksmiths who, maybe they tried it once, 50 years ago, but haven't touched a hammer, since, and they just read books and watch videos, and then when somebody's got a question, they give them supposed knowledge, what I call, it's the difference between practical and something.
Theoretical,
yeah. There's a difference between practical or working knowledge, i.e. somebody who has done it or is currently doing it,
and book smart.
And books, yeah, it's the other word for book smart. I just can't think of it right now, but yeah, academic knowledge versus working knowledge or practical knowledge. Okay, academically speaking, you shouldn't be able to weld dirty steel in a dirty coal forge, with full of freaking clinkers and just nasty and just without paying attention, without going through these processes, this, that, and the other thing. Yet as a working knowledge, I can take a dirty piece of cable, I'm talking covered in tar, rust, debris, gunk, nastiness, stick it in the fire, get it get it yellow hot, pull it out, couple of taps, do that 2 or 3 times, and I've got a homogeneous piece of steel. Now, I've done that so many times. I will caveat
that in the theory, it will never say that it's not possible. It's just that it's not advised.
Right. I'm just, but that's the point. A smarter, accurate, academically knowledgeable person will put that caveat. Somebody who is,
and everyone should.
Everyone should, absolutely. But somebody throwing out that, here's what I've heard, I'm going to say it as fact.
Yeah.
That's where the problem lies. Never say something is fact unless you can back it up with working proof, and even that's sketchy because just because you can't do it doesn't mean somebody else can't. But,
citing your sources is incredibly important.
Absolutely. So Bill, again, I wasn't jumping on you specifically, but you brought up that excellent point of, okay, so I'll kind of get back to, yes, I'm a rookie. I acquired my first real Anvil Forge. Got to free up it today. Okay. Yeah, Bill, and to be fair, listening, no, anybody?
To be fair,
there we go. To be fair, that is not to downplay in any way, shape, or form academic knowledge. Academic knowledge is important,
If they were going to, they wouldn't invite me on the show.
Exactly. No, Sam, you are always welcome to hop in the show whenever you want. I wish y'all's Forge chat was recorded live so I can randomly hop in and I wish it wasn't invite only. But it's so okay, me, for example, I don't have a ton of academic knowledge about this. I learn and have always learned by doing or experiencing. Okay? I can experience something and then pick up a book and read about what I experienced, but if I were to pick up a book and read and then try to do it, I would, in my experience, read a book, follow those processes, try to do it by the book, I will fail every time. It's when I get an idea of how to do something, not like an in-depth how-to, but an idea of how to do something, and then try it. That's when I kind of succeed more. My rate of successes are more when I'm just winging it, you know. So it's like,
well, everything's worth trying once.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
You try it one time and you learn how not to do it the next time.
Exactly. Hey,
I've always encouraged people just to do things that people tell them they can't do.
Yeah, that's why on my channel. That's why on my channel, it's you know, I would never ever tell somebody, no, you can't do that. You know, I mean, unless it's already been both academically and practically proven that it can't be done. You know, like I can't even think of it.
You cannot prove a negative.
Yeah, other words. But
no, I mean by definition, you cannot prove a negative. Like, it can't be done. Well, you can't categorically prove that.
Yeah.
No, you never prove a negative.
But and we've kind of gotten off the topic of Wootz, but that's okay. That's okay.
Time for Damascus.
Yeah.
Are we talking real Damascus?
Oh God. I love doing pattern.
Maybe next week.
Hey, yeah, I mean, I'm down if you guys are down to do pattern weld. No, Sully already has a plan for next week's Medal of the Week.
I do?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't.
Plan. You said you were going to do a simple steel.
Yeah, but I haven't come up with anything yet. I didn't have time.
Okay.
So we can figure it out on the fly.
Figure it out. But yeah, you know, like, that's actually one of the reasons why I find Damascus, like what we call buzzword marketing, whatever, pattern welded steel Damascus. I call it Damascus. Shut up. That's why I call, or why I like doing Damascus, is because it's like I don't do it nearly enough. It's more of a material issue for me, but I like doing Damascus because I like playing with different ideas, like, you know, stuff that may. To be fair, I haven't really gotten much further with the Damascus bowl that I've done, or that I'm working on. I need to build a surface grinder, or send it to somebody that has a surface grinder to clean it up, because it's just it's too much to do on my 2x72. But yeah, that Damascus bowl that I have is just a big like 6-inch plate of Damascus that I need to, you know, perfectly flatten out, you know, perfectly smooth out and grind, in order to continue with that. And I need to take like
fun times.
Yeah, I need to take like 1/16. What's one more than a 1/16? Not quite an eighth, off of each side of inch. You know, not freedom units.
So like 3 30-seconds.
Yeah, like 3 30-seconds off of each side, and hopefully not make the thing 3 30-seconds in thickness itself.
All good, Bobby. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
But as someone pointed out, it's just past midnight here. It's actually 20 to 1 in the morning. I'm going to head off, but thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely, always
Sorry
glad
I
to
dropped
have
in
you.
late.
No, it's not a problem. It's not a problem.
Definitely thanks for popping in. You definitely bring a unique perspective to it.
Absolutely.
Oh man, when it comes to old steels, I'm well. I mean, it comes to steel in any regard. I'm always there.
Yeah. So yeah, and whether we're talking something as simple as 4140 or 1095 next week, or if we're talking, getting into the much loved topic of Damascus itself, whatever we discuss, you're always welcome. You're always welcome, Sam. And anybody in the chat, really, it's like if you guys have. That's what this is. This is if you have knowledge or want to jump in the chat and discuss what we're talking about. This will expire in 7 days. You are more than welcome to hop in, and give us your words, So
Catch you guys.
Catch you later, Sam. Much appreciated. Everybody give him a round of applause.
See ya, brother.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
But yeah, rolling mill, palm sander. There's dozens of ways I could do it. Yeah. The only steel sanding stuff that I have is for my 272 though. So tea is too good. But yeah, that being our Wootz topic, everybody, I want to give a big thanks to Sully for coming up with that and doing the initial research for that and making it interesting enough that we peaked at 32 viewers today.
Woohoo!
Don't forget, everybody. Let people know what we do here. It's more than just a show for me to sit here and talk at you guys. It's a show for us to sit down and spend the morning discussing what we love to discuss. Be it metals, be it blacksmithing techniques, be it this or that. Yeah. So
I apologize for Wootz taking up the entirety of the show, but it was kind of a big topic that. And I think we kind of alluded to it last week that it was going to be the whole darn show, and it was probably going to run long. So
we could even do another show on it. Big Dog was in the house. Love you, Big Dog. Gotta go. See ya. Wootz, there it is. Tag team back again. Check it to wreck it. Let's not do this. I want to.
There we go. Copyright infringement.
Yeah. I know every word to that song. I am proud to say. But yeah, just remember, let people know that this is a show for us, by us, and as all of you, most of you who are here know, this whole thing started with Big Dog Forge, as a place for blacksmiths to kind of get together and shoot the breeze, and yeah, and I'd like to take it to any next levels I'm possible, or any possible levels. I love the idea that that I have the ability to set it up so that people can be on the show with me. And if the video on Discord was a little bit better, I would totally set it up so that I had people on video if they so chose.
Yeah, I think we still need like 2 more boosts to do that.
Yeah. But I mean, it would basically be this, and whoever wants to be on video can be on video. So, like, that's what this show is all about. So get yourselves your logos for your avatars, or for your profiles for Discord, and Sully, if you were to talk a second.
What's that?
Your name can light up green just like Sully's did.
Oh.
Oh, fun times. All right,
I
guys.
was like, wait, what are you talking about? I missed something, but I guess not.
No, I was I'm just basically chatting about what the show, like.
Yeah. Who was trying to jump in there?
That would have been me, Sully.
Oh, okay.
So to be honest, I just put in our Island My Forge chat, and she's finished. The assembly bench is all finished. Take a look.
There you go. Now that's in your builders program, your workshop program, right?
Yeah, it's inside. Microsoft SolidWorks, basically creating a 3D graphic image, but this thing was not easy. It's trying to take off the plans of a totally different project than totally customizing it to the final specs that my professor was looking for. But I'm very pleased with how this came out.
Yeah.
It was not easy to
kind of similar,
recreate.
Kind of similar to how I built my. Do I have one of them? No, I have one, and the materials to build another. A rolling workbench that I built. I used, instead of 6, I used 4 posts, 2 of these, and I used 4x4 posts in the corner, and put wheels on the caster wheels on the bottoms. So I got a rolling workbench that is 2 foot by 3 foot, I believe. But SolidWorks, I'm gonna have to look that up. That might be interesting to plan out some metal projects. That's cool. Is it built yet, or just finished on the SolidWorks?
It's finished in SolidWorks. I pretty much created since the assemblies are finished, then the next step was to create the drawings. Essentially creating the builder's drawings. So I created the drawings with all the measurements I did, all the parts that are part of the assembly. So essentially it's all finished and ready to be submitted. This was too good of a project to, because sometimes I delete the files from my schoolwork or at the end of the term, whatever. But this one is one of those where I'm going to keep. Like this is something I want to keep on to in case I want to build this for life and down the road.
Right. I'm getting a notice.
But that thing is, when I evaluated it, that table is every bit that's made out of solid pine, and the weight of the table was 85.68 pounds. So I wasn't surprised with this table being all made out of wood, the weight would be up there.
Yeah. Well, let us know when it's built. I like my things being on wheels personally.
Yeah, you like to keep yours. Keep your benches mobile, don't you?
Almost everything in my shop is on wheels. Everything that I've built, at least, is on wheels. But cool. Keep us posted on it. With that, though, guys, again, I'd like to thank all the participants, and he's gone. Big thanks to Sam for his knowledge, and a big super round of applause for Solbert for coming up with this and doing the preliminary research to bring to us. I hope a lot of you learned something. Yeah, I think we'll call that a show. So
yeah, thanks for showing up, y'all.
Yeah,
I do appreciate it.
You guys have a wonderful Sunday. Get out there to your shops and do something, please. Anyway, all right, we're gonna go ahead and call that. Bye.